So, welcome back to the Female CEO Summit. I'm your host, Janine Worth, trauma expert, helping female entrepreneurs to heal so that they can have the spectacular success they desire. And today I've invited Jessica Killingley, also known as the Book Witch. Jessica is a publishing consultant and literary agent who helps entrepreneurs write and publish game-changing books that grow their business, create lasting impact, and establish them as the go-to expert in their niche. So Jessica, welcome. Thank you for making the time.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Jean. It's a pleasure to be here.
So before we get into all the nitty-gritty of writing a best-selling book, please tell us a bit about your own entrepreneurial journey.
Absolutely. Well, I never thought I was going to have an entrepreneurial journey. It certainly wasn't something I ever intended. I spent 20 years working in the publishing industry in the UK, and I was a board level marketing director, so I'd really worked my way up. And I loved it, but I was at that point, my son was about to start school, and I was I either kind of want to do more or I want to do less. I want to be around for my son more, or, do I want to put my foot down and become an MD? And I was at a real crossroads with deciding what to do. And then when my son started school, and they go to school for about 5 minutes a day after having been a full day nursery school, I was like, oh, this is going to be really tricky. I think we need to look at our family life and how this works. So I'm going to take the leap, and I'm going to leave and see what I could do. And at that point, I never thought, starting a business, I thought that was just something that other people did. And so I kind of found myself thinking, right, okay, I need to start thinking about how I'm going to earn some money. And luckily, because I know the power of coaching, I believe, I come from a coaching background, I believe in the power of coaching. I was like, right, I need to get myself a coach to help me work out what to do next. And it really was that coach who helped me find the kind of, self-belief and the skills that this was actually possible for me. And the funny thing is that when I first started, literally the first conversation she had with me was like, oh my God, you should help people write books. I think, no, I'm done with publishing. I've had 20 years, I need a break. So for the first couple of months, I was sort of starting to build my business in terms of helping people with the marketing around their own businesses. And after a couple of months, I was like, books is what I know. Books is what I do. I'm like, cut me and I bleed ink. This is who I am. And it was also that realization that, lots of people want to tell their story and want to kind of do books around their business. And obviously self-publishing has removed that barrier to entry for a lot of people, but it's a completely labyrinthine process. It's really difficult to know where to start. And also because it's so easy, any kind of curation and quality control just goes out the window. So it was kind of really easy for me to see how I could actually help people put a really good quality book out into the world that they were going to be really proud of, to have their name on the cover. And so, I was like, oh my God, I've started a business. And then, because, businesses, I think, are like writing books, and also I think like cats and tattoos, but one is never enough. So I then set up a literary agency with two wonderful friends of mine who I worked with for a long time in publishing. So I sort of still have that foot in traditional publishing. And that's an enormous amount of fun. And that genuinely was like, oh, wow, I didn't think I could do that, but it's brilliant. And that was, I've gone from being, I'll just do a bit of freelancing to serial entrepreneur in 2 years. And I've just realized I've got 2 more businesses planned as well, actually. So it's addictive.
It's amazing that once you're capable of that, and you have that courage to take the first leap, from there on, everything just becomes so much easier.
Absolutely. And that's very, very true, because, it is taking that difficult first step, and that's then the kind of the floodgates open. That's the gateway drug into kind of doing more and more stuff, and realizing that your mind is the only thing that's stopping you from going wherever you want to go. And it was funny because somebody said to me the other day, in a very nice way, but she sort of said, oh, I guess, at some point maybe you could look at going back, you're doing so well, you could look at going back into into a traditional publishing job. And I was literally aghast with horror, like, why on earth would I want to do that? Like, and it was the realization that there is literally no job on the planet working for someone else that is better than what I can do for myself. And that was like, wow, that's a pretty great feeling to have, actually.
Yes. Well, that's a crazy thing. Most people leave their 9 to 5 because they want flexibility and freedom. You don't get successful in that just to go back to being your desk.
I do think there is still that mindset of kind of, the scarcity and fear around, like, thinking that somebody needs to give you a regular paycheck for you to have that validation, and that, doing it, and to be honest, that was me a couple of years ago. We're coming up for nearly 3 years for when I left, and like the idea of like, well, how do you make your own money? Like, I only know that somebody gives me money for working 12-hour days. The idea that I could make my own money and only work 4 or 5-hour days was sort of seemed radical. So yeah, I wouldn't go back for all the tea in China.
Yeah, no, that's great. So many people might not be aware of this, but why is writing a book an important strategy for your business?
That is a good question. I mean, it is basically, your book is like your platinum business card. Whatever you want to do in your business, wherever you want to go, having a book is going to open that door for you. If you want to get a TED Talk, or you've had a TED Talk and you want to leverage it even more, if you want to, attract really, high-end one-to-one clients or massively scale, it gives you that authority that says, this is who I am, this is what I know, and this is why I'm good. And I think crucially, the impact, I think, it's an absolute privilege to work with all the female entrepreneurs that I work with, because everybody comes from a place of service and wanting to make an impact and seeing how they can use what they know to help more people. And when you put a book into the equation, just the size of the audience that you can help is just sort of exponentially increases. We might serve thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people in our business. A book can be reaching tens of thousands of people around the world, which then gets you on stages to reach even more people. And so at a very kind of big macro level, it is that incredible, it's not just an asset, it is a strategy. And at a micro level, in the day-to-day of your business, it's a brilliant reason to go out and get publicity, because, after a while, if we're coaches or consultants, there's only so many kind of hooks that we have for our kind of publicity angles. But, a book gives you a reason to go out and talk to journalists and get on podcasts and get featured in all those amazing places. It's the big passion of mine, and kind of one of my taglines is I want to help you turn readers into clients, because at the end of the day, that's the important thing, that that you're getting a return on investment in the time and money you're spending on putting the book out into the world. And the beautiful thing about a book is that when you think about why somebody works with you, or rather why they choose not to work with you, it's usually not because they've gone, oh, well, her down the road, your competitor, I like her more. The reason is often their own brain, like their own limiting beliefs are stopping them. Like, well, I think Janine's great, but I don't think I can get the results because it's me. Like, it's not her, it's me. I just don't think I could do that. I can't do what other people do. So in your book, you are able to lay out all of those arguments, all of those blocks that somebody has about whether or not they can get the results with you. And you can do it beautifully in a book. Not only are they then paying you for the privilege of teaching you how to be a client, but you have a real, a very privileged moment, because if you think about how busy we are and how we multitask, and I'm watching a webinar, but I'm putting the washing on and I'm making toast and I'm whatever. When somebody's reading, they are just reading, whether they're reading digitally or whether they're reading physically, and you have got someone's undivided attention. And in that space and time, you can make them feel amazing about themselves, you can really give them an incredible transformation, and you can show them what's possible for them with your help. And so you are literally leading them to the front door of your business and your continued support. So that's why it's such a kind of an amazing tool in a sort of day-to-day business sense, as well as in that bigger picture sense of how you kind of establish your authority and increase your impact.
I love that. And that was a big part of the discussion that we had before you convinced me to bring my book to the world. And I think what a lot of people would be asking themselves, because I know this was definitely one of my questions when we started talking about me doing a book, is how can we tell if our story is relevant?
I remember that very well, because I remember my response was, are you freaking kidding me? Like, your story is definitely relevant. I might have used a different F word in the voice note. It is a really, really great question. And I think an important thing that I always want to get across to people is a story about you has to be a story about me, because at the end of the day, while we might be interested to a certain level about what's gone on in your life, we actually do really care about ourselves. And it's when you can look at what's happened to you and your story and what you've been through, and tease out those learnings and connect those learnings to other people's sort of, problems, the emotions that they're feeling when they're going through those problems and they have those pain points. That's how you can, so any story really can be relevant, because it's about connecting to not just the surface, but the deep problems of the people that you want to help. And your story might not have to be exactly the same as something that somebody else has gone through, because actually, sometimes when we have stories that are quite extreme, that you've gone through something quite extreme, that somebody might not feel that's relatable to them. But what you can do is you can pick out those emotions and those learnings from your story. And it's really key. I think a lot of times people want to sort of tell their story because it's, even though it might be, they might have to feel quite vulnerable in doing so, in a way it feels quite safe, because it's like, well, it's my story, no one can criticize it because it happened to me. And actually, it's about saying to people, take that story, but don't be afraid to step into the role of a teacher as well, because that's when you will create an incredibly empowering, brilliant book that somebody will read and will just be like, wow, I can't believe what I've learned from this. I can't believe the transformation that I've got from taking action, because the author has, this is what happened to me. This is how I went through it. This is what I did. This is what you can try. And it's not, you don't have to sort of put yourself up on this pedestal of like, I know everything and I'm the guru, but it is about using your story to be relatable to somebody else's journey, and just reaching your hand back to that woman or whoever is a couple of steps behind you and saying, let me help you. I was where you were. Let me show you some shortcuts. And that could be through, helping somebody through trauma, or teaching them how to use Facebook ads, whatever it is. We all want to give a hand back to somebody to help them along on their journey.
No, I love that. So let's talk about some of the myths or misconceptions people have about writing a book, because I think that there are quite a few, and there were quite a few even for me that came up, and I was like, oh, what about this? What about that?
I think the big one is, oh my God, it's going to take me like 3 years to write a book. Or possibly the other side of that, thanks internet, it's going to take, I can do it in 30 days. I could do it in 30 days, it would be rubbish. It doesn't take 3 years to write a book at all. It's not like you have to shut yourself away for a day or week in a glamorous writing shed. You might find that actually that's how you want to do it. A lot of clients I've worked with, literally an hour a day has got them a book in a few months of writing. You can write your first draft in around 12 weeks. Because the way that I teach people, it's like we've all got busy lives, we've all got other jobs. It's about fitting it into, the time that you've got. So it doesn't, you don't have to just stop everything, because no one's got time for that. So I think the time factor, is often a big myth, that it's just going to sort of take over. The thought that, oh, but I have to be like, I'm not good at English, I'm not good at writing, or, I haven't got perfect grammar, I got told off on the internet for using a passive past participle the other day, and I was like, do not come at me about my grammar. I'm completely confident in all usages of my grammar. But, that you have to be, and actually, funnily enough, that's relevant because it's exactly stuff like that somebody comments on a Facebook post. That's why those fears come up for people, that they think, oh, well, if I write something and it's a bit shonky, someone's going to have a go at me. That's why the world has given us copy editors, just for the record. But I think, it's that thing that you have to be an expert or you have to be perfect. And it is, like I just said, it's just about saying I'm a couple of steps ahead of somebody and, feeling like how I own my story. And it's setting up, I'm just going to tell this story in this way. I'm not trying to be everything to everyone. So I think there's that myth that you have to sort of be this like super smart person who knows everything and has got everything under control and is like perfect. And, no book is ever perfect. I like to say, we can't be perfect, but, we can shoot for excellence. I want to help people write a book that they are really proud of. And that's why we do it in slightly longer than 30 days. But, and I think also the other one as well is that you have to, we can talk more about this later, but the idea that like the only way of doing it is getting it traditionally published and getting a deal, and that you somehow kind of need that validation of getting an agent and a deal, because in this day and age it's just not true. So I think those are the big ones. I think the kind of time and feeling good enough and just sort of needing that validation, they're all nonsense.
Perfect. So let's talk about the mistakes that you see first-time authors making.
So I think one of the big mistakes is around planning, and that people just dive into writing without doing any planning because it kind of feels exciting, but you're going to get lost in the weeds after you've written about 3,000 words. Like, how many people watching this now, somewhere on their laptop, have got a document of like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 words? They started their book, never went anywhere, and that's because you didn't plan it. And the way that I help people and the way that we do this in my academy is that my first piece of planning is to do with your business. I want to know that you know where you're going in your business and that you are, and not just what you should be doing, but what you want to be doing. Because the book has got to have a really, really clear outcome. What is this book going to do for you? How are you going to get the return on investment? What are you planning to, how are you working with clients? Because then we're reverse engineering the book that you need to write based on where you want to go. So that's the first bit of planning. And then of course the most important piece of planning is the actual structure of your book. And the more you plan it in the detail, the more you build the bones of your skeleton, the easier it is to flesh it out when you sit down to write. And so that you don't have that sense of sitting down to a session of writing. You think, all right, I've got an hour, I've got 60, 90 minutes. What am I going to write? What am I going to write today? You sit down, you open your laptop and you're like, right, I'm writing 2,000 words on imposter syndrome. Boom, because you know where it's fit into your schedule. So that, I think, is a kind of key thing, not really knowing where you're going with it, what it's going to do at the end. A big thing, I think, is not thinking beforehand, like, well, who am I selling this to? How am I going to sell it? So not thinking about the kind of PR and marketing and launch strategy before you start. Because if you write a book and you stick it up on Amazon, other than your very immediate circle, who's going to know that it's there? So I think not building an audience while you're writing as well is a common mistake. You need to be doing, which you'll all be doing as part of your business anyway. So this is the beauty of it. I'm a big believer in kind of work hard once. So the stuff that you're doing with your book is having a halo effect on everything else that you're doing in your business, and all the content that you're doing in your business, and all the growth, activity that you're doing in your business. It all those dots join together, so that you are very, very intentional about how you're going to sell it. Because people come to me, it's like, oh, I've written my book, can you help with marketing and PR? And it's like, yes, I'll just get the keys to my time machine. So you can do it, and there's stuff that you can do, but you will set yourself up for success much better. And the other one final point I'd make on that as well is speaking to people who've come out the other side of it, and even people that I've worked with, that they've sort of said, do you know what, I really played it small. Because the thing that they were worrying about was the writing process. And the writing process is hard, but actually it is the marketing, it is the selling, it is the PR side of it that's kind of even harder. And once you've done one book, you know how the writing goes. So often it's the second book that you can really like make a big impact with. So because I know that when I work with people on their first book, I try and sort of leapfrog that stage to them and encourage them to sort of think big right from the beginning. And really, you know, I like to make people have really big, obnoxious goals about where they want to go with this, so that we can really make that investment of time and money really, really count and really make a big splash with their book.